Imagine a foreign intelligence agency tracking military weapon shipments,
Right.
right? But they aren't hacking the Pentagon. They're not launching some billion-dollar spy satellite. They're literally just logging into the local bakery's security camera across the street from a loading dock.
Yeah, it completely flips our traditional understanding of cybersecurity on its head. I mean, the threat isn't always this highly sophisticated cyber weapon. Sometimes it's literally just an unsecured lens pointing in the wrong direction.
Exactly. And, when you think about a digital perimeter, it's so tempting to picture this giant, impermeable wall. You're safe inside, and the danger's outside. But you step into the reality of our digital infrastructure in 2026, and that wall is, well, it's basically an illusion.
Right. It is terrifyingly porous.
It really is. So welcome to this deep dive, custom tailored for you, the learner. Today, we are looking at a stack of sources that reveal a pretty stark new reality about what publicly exposed actually means right now.
Because we're seeing a really fundamental shift. I mean, yes, the attack surface is expanding, but more importantly, the velocity at which attackers are exploiting it has accelerated in ways we couldn't have predicted even like 2 years ago.
Absolutely. So our mission today is to explore 3 distinct but deeply connected active exploitation campaigns that are happening right now. We're going to track this from the widespread compromise of everyday websites deep into the breached internal plumbing of enterprise AI platforms, and then finally out into the physical world.
Yeah, where hackers are literally leaping from the internet directly into physical surveillance.
Exactly. We're going to break down the mechanics of how this is actually happening so you can walk away understanding the true shape of the modern attack surface.
And it's a fascinating journey, really, because the mechanics change at every single layer. What works against a public blog is very different from what breaks an enterprise workflow.
Right.
Which is, of course, different, again, from hijacking a roadside camera.
Okay, so let's unpack this with our first major issue, the ubiquitous web. The sources highlight this massive ongoing WordPress epidemic, codenamed WB2 Shell. So how exactly are attackers getting in here?
Well, the foundation of this campaign rests on a combination of 2 critical vulnerabilities. Specifically, it's CVE 2026-63030 and CVE 2026-60137.
Okay.
And when an attacker chains these 2 flaws together, it allows for unauthenticated remote code execution, or RCE. And honestly, the terrifying part is that this impacts default, stock WordPress installations dating all the way back to December 2025.
Wait, unauthenticated, meaning they don't need a leaked password or an admin account or anything.
Exactly. No credentials needed whatsoever.
That's wow. Because usually WordPress gets hacked because, I don't know, a site owner forgot to update some obscure third-party photo gallery plugin or something. But Searchlight Cyber noted this attack has absolutely no preconditions, no plugins required.
Yeah, it's the core system itself.
So how do you just walk into a lockdown core system and execute code?
It really comes down to the 60137 vulnerability, which is fundamentally a route confusion bug located within the REST API batch endpoint.
Okay, wait, route confusion. I want to make sure we're visualizing the mechanism here. Is this sort of like a mailroom sorting error?
Oh, that's actually a great way to put it.
Right, like an attacker isn't, kicking down the door to the CEO's office. Instead, they write a very specific, highly confusing internal routing code on a package.
Right.
And the automated mailroom system reads that code, gets its logic totally twisted, and just accidentally bypasses the security scanners entirely, dumping the uninspected package directly onto the CEO's desk.
That is a remarkably accurate analogy, honestly, because you aren't breaking the lock, you are manipulating the internal logic to bypass the permission check entirely.
Wow.
Yeah, in technical terms, the sources note the attacker exploits the improper sanitization of a specific parameter. It's the author not in parameter within a core function called WP query.
So they feed it bad data. The system gets completely confused about where to route it, and suddenly they're just in.
Precisely. Ben Marr, he's a security engineer at Intruder, he explained that this route confusion bug acts as the entry point. Because the system is confused, the attacker is suddenly allowed to invoke internal handlers.
Which means what, exactly?
It means they can alter a core database query with a single, unauthenticated HTTP request. They bypass your mailroom security entirely.
But here's the detail that absolutely floored me. It's not just that this bug exists, it's how it was weaponized. Searchlight Cyber didn't have a team of human researchers spending 6 months reverse engineering this thing.
Not at all.
They found this exploit chain using OpenAI GPT 5.6 Sol in just over 10 hours.
10 hours.
Yeah. What's fascinating here is how AI is fundamentally lowering the technical barrier, right? And it's collapsing the timeline for attackers. Historically, mapping the logic of a massive code base like WordPress to find a specific root confusion vulnerability, it was incredibly labor-intensive.
Right. It would take a whole team. Exactly. But now an AI model can ingest that code, map the logic paths, and identify the exact sequence of HTTP requests needed to break it within a single workday.
And it goes way beyond just finding the hole. Ryan Dewhurst, the founder and CEO of Kevintel, he noted that AI-assisted analysis made developing a working proof of concept trivial.
Yes, and that word trivial, that is what keeps security teams awake at night. Dewhurst explained that once the vulnerability details were public, attackers immediately leveraged AI to generate multiple complex SQL injection techniques.
So they didn't just have one way in.
Right. We saw blind payloads, union-based payloads, and Boolean-based payloads hitting the internet almost instantly.
Let's translate why that matters for a second.
Yeah.
The AI didn't just give them one key, it instantly generated every possible variation of a master key. So if a server blocked one type of database query, the AI already had like 3 backup methods ready to go.
Exactly. The speed is just staggering. And the data reflects that too. The cloud security firm Wiz found that 60% of organizations using WordPress initially had a vulnerable instance. 60%.
Yeah. And critically, 25% of those organizations were exposing that vulnerable server directly to the public internet.
Okay, so once the system is confused and the attacker is sitting on the CEO's desk, basically, what's the actual payload? What happens post-exploitation?
Right, so Wiz researchers track this, and they aren't just looking around. They are dropping a 150 kilobyte web shell disguised as a legitimate security plugin called CMSMAP.
Wow, hiding as a security plugin, that's sneaky. But what is a web shell exactly? It's basically a remote control panel for the server. Disguising it as a security plugin is a very clever way to hide in plain sight. This fake CMSMAP plugin is described in the sources as a full-featured attack platform.
So they can do pretty much whatever they want.
Pretty much. It allows the attacker to manage files, directly access the database, scan internal network ports, and inject batch code. It even comes preloaded with privilege escalation modules.
Wiz also saw them creating over 100 backdoored administrator accounts and performing local file inclusion attacks, or LFI, to steal database credentials. And in one instance, they repeatedly tried to install a remote access Trojan called the Overlord RAT.
Oh, yeah.
And the sources specifically note it's written in Golang. Why is the programming language it's written in significant here?
It's actually a very important detail. Programs written in Golang can be compiled into a single, standalone binary file. It doesn't need external dependencies or specific interpreters to run, unlike, say, Python or PHP.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, you drop a Golang binary on almost any server operating system, and it just executes. It makes it incredibly versatile for attackers who want to ensure their malware runs everywhere, which is exactly what you want when you are mass scanning the entire internet.
And they absolutely were mass scanning. Kevintel tracked the activity to 13 unique IP addresses operating out of places like Switzerland, Germany, Indonesia, and Singapore. Watchtower's honeypots registered tens of thousands of attempts right after the exploit dropped. But there is a silver lining here. This wasn't a total internet meltdown, right?
No, thank goodness it wasn't. The potential blast radius was catastrophic, but Dewhurst pointed out a critical saving grace here. WordPress has supported automatic background updates for security releases for years.
Oh, that's huge.
That one feature effectively neutralized the threat for thousands of sites. It dramatically shrank the exposure window before that global mass scanning could fully saturate the internet.
Which is just a massive win for secure defaults.
Yeah.
But as Dewhurst warned, if your update failed for whatever reason, you don't just patch it today and move on. You have to actively hunt for those 100 backdoor admin accounts.
Exactly. Patching the mailroom logic doesn't matter if the attacker has already copied the keys to the building.
Right. Okay, so we've seen how AI accelerates attacks on the public face of the web. But attackers are also hunting deeper, going after the internal plumbing of Fortune 500 companies. So let's look at the ServiceNow AI platform vulnerability. The speed dynamic here is totally different.
It really is, because ServiceNow is fundamentally different from a WordPress blog. It is the backbone of IT operations, ticketing, and automated workflows for massive enterprises.
Right, it's not just a website.
Exactly. If you breach ServiceNow, you aren't just defacing a public page, you are gaining administrative leverage over the entire corporate environment.
And the specific flaw they are exploiting is CVE 2026-6875. The sources describe this as a critical sandbox escape vulnerability with a CVSS score of 9.5 out of 10.
Very high.
Yeah. Searchlight Cyber found that it allows unauthenticated users to run arbitrary code, which compromises the entire instance and all connected proxy servers.
Yeah.
But how does that escape actually happen? Like, what is the mechanism?
To understand the escape, we have to look at the vulnerability itself. A sandbox is specifically designed to restrict what code can and cannot do. In this case, attackers are sending malformed payloads to a specific endpoint. The sources identify it as /assessment_thanks.do.
Okay.
And the vulnerability exists because the system fails to properly restrict the type of code allowed within that specific sandbox context.
So they are basically feeding the endpoint instructions that the system mistakenly believes are safe to execute outside the designated boundaries.
Exactly. The input validation fails, and the payload jumps from the restricted application layer directly into the underlying operating
Oh,
system.
wait a second. Looking at the reports from Diffuse Cyber and Searchlight Cyber,
Yeah.
there's a massive timeline discrepancy here.
Yeah, there is.
Searchlight Cyber reported this vulnerability to ServiceNow back on April 1st, 2026. ServiceNow rolled out patches throughout June for all their versions: Brazil, Australia, Zurich, Yokohama. But Diffuse Cyber is just now reporting in the wild exploitation using that assessment thanks endpoint. Are attackers just waiting for the security researchers to publish the proof of concept and then weaponizing it before companies can actually apply the June patches?
You've identified the fundamental friction point of enterprise security right there. Yes.
Wow.
Because when WordPress pushes an auto-update, it happens in the background. But ServiceNow is deeply integrated into enterprise operations. Patching self-hosted versions of Brazil or Yokohama that requires scheduled downtime, committee approvals, and extensive quality assurance testing so you don't accidentally break the company's entire ticketing system.
Right, so there was a built-in delay. The attackers know the blueprint for the exploit is public, but they also know the enterprise doors haven't been locked yet because of corporate bureaucracy.
Precisely. And Diffuse Cyber initially suspected the attackers had found a novel way in, but they later issued a correction confirming that the payload they captured matches Searchlight Cyber's published proof of concept exactly.
Really? They just copied it?
Yeah. The attackers didn't invent a new zero-day. They literally copy-pasted the published research to break into systems that were lagging on their patch cycles.
That has to be so infuriating for defenders. But if we connect this to the bigger picture, it seems like just patching the hole isn't enough anymore, is it?
No, it's not. Security researcher Adam Hughes made a really brilliant observation regarding ServiceNow's response. He noted they aren't just applying a bandage to the assessment thanks endpoint. They're fundamentally structurally defending the system by severely restricting the type of code that can execute in those sandbox contexts moving forward.
Oh, so a deeper fix.
Right. They are changing the architecture of the sandbox itself to assume that attackers will eventually find another route confusion or input validation flaw.
Okay, so we've looked at complex road confusion in WordPress and AI-accelerated sandbox escapes in ServiceNow. Both of these rely on really intricate code manipulation. But here is where it gets really interesting.
Oh, yeah.
Our third source is a July 10th advisory from the Dutch AIVD and MIVD intelligence services. And the most terrifying threat they describe requires absolutely zero days.
Right. This report takes us completely out of the software layer and directly into the physical world.
Russian intelligence is systematically hijacking internet-connected security cameras across EU and NATO states and inside Ukraine. They are using the live video feeds to track military logistics, transport routes, and weapons shipments. Inside Ukraine, they're actively using exposed roadside and business cameras as military targeting aids.
And the mechanics of this campaign are chillingly simple compared to WP2 Shell or ServiceNow. The intelligence operators aren't dropping 150 kilobyte Golang payloads or writing complex sandbox escapes. They don't need to.
They just log in.
Exactly. They are simply scanning the internet, fingerprinting IP cameras by brand, and logging into devices that are still running default passwords, obsolete firmware, and unaltered factory settings.
Wait, hold on, though. The report from the internet scanning firm Census cites 87,000 internet-connected cameras running vulnerable services across the EU, NATO, and Ukraine. But are foreign intelligence services actually actively hacking 87,000 cameras? That scale seems absurdly high. Are they actually breaching all of them, or is that just the potential attack surface?
That is a very crucial distinction to make. Census's own principal researcher, Martin Grutin, explicitly warns against misinterpreting that number. Just because a camera is exposed to the public internet does not automatically mean a nation-state is actively watching the feed.
Right, because looking at the breakdown, a lot of these 87,000 devices aren't running broken camera software at all, are they? Like in the Netherlands, Sensi's flagged 159 hosts vulnerable to a 2016 bug in Dropbear,
Yeah.
which is literally just an SSH tool, and 112 hosts running a 2021 Apache out-of-bounds write bug.
Right.
These are old network services.
Mhm.
If you filter the data down to vulnerabilities in the actual camera software itself, the number in the Netherlands drops to just 541.
Exactly. And the Dutch intelligence services themselves confirmed they only caught a small number of cameras directly breached along those logistics routes. However, this raises a really important question about asymmetric risk.
How so? Like the ratio of effort to payoff.
Yeah, exactly. Even if there are only 541 vulnerable cameras in a specific region, an adversary doesn't need 87,000 cameras. They only need one.
Oh, wow.
A single compromised camera overlooking a military loading dock or pointed at a major highway junction that provides an intelligence service with a live physical read on operations. They know exactly when the supply trucks move.
And they get all of that intelligence without ever touching the military's actual network.
What?
Military's internal cyber defenses could be flawless. They could patch every sandbox, update every server. But if the local bakery across the street leaves their security camera on a default password, the adversary wins.
Precisely. The vulnerability is entirely decentralized. It's sitting on your neighbor's hardware.
So how do you fix a threat that is this decentralized? The Dutch services outlined recommendations, and honestly, they sound like basic IT hygiene. Turn off universal plug-and-play, UPnP, and port forwarding. Why are those two so critical?
Because UPnP is designed for convenience, not security. It automatically allows devices on your local network to open ports on your router's firewall so they can communicate with the outside world. It's how you can view your home camera on your phone while you're at work.
Right.
But by doing that, UPnP effectively places the device directly on the public internet. It bypasses your firewall entirely.
So if a foreign intelligence scanner pings that public IP, the camera just happily answers the door.
Exactly. So the fix is to disable UPnP and disable port forwarding. If remote access is necessary, it should only be done through a VPN. Enforce multi-factor authentication. Change default credentials. And most importantly, there's a physical fix.
Just aim the lens somewhere else.
Yes. Aim the lens. The value of the camera to an intelligence service is entirely dictated by what is in the frame. Keep logistics routes out of the shot.
So what does this all mean? We've covered incredible ground today. We started with millions of WordPress blogs compromised by a single HTTP request, moved to deep enterprise ServiceNow platforms breached via sandbox escapes, and ended with literal roadside cameras hijacked by intelligence agencies. But there is a massive glowing through line connecting all of this.
The definition of the perimeter has completely changed.
Exactly. In 2026, the phrase publicly exposed increasingly just means publicly exploited. It doesn't matter if you're running a lifestyle blog, an enterprise AI ticketing system, or a security camera on a loading dock. If you leave a door visible to the internet, it is going to be tested, mapped, and breached.
But it is vital to remember that defensive measures absolutely still work. I mean, the WP2 shell disaster was heavily mitigated because automatic background updates saved thousands of sites before the mass scanning even reached them.
Right.
And the camera threat, orchestrated by nation-states, that can literally be neutralized by unchecking a box for UPnP and changing a password. You just have to actively audit your digital footprint. Ask yourself, what do I have exposed to the internet right now that I've totally forgotten about?
Which leaves me with one final kind of terrifying thought for you to mull over. We saw in the WordPress sources that OpenAI GPT 5.6 was used to find a massive, complex software vulnerability and generate exploit payloads in just 10 hours.
Yeah.
And we saw in the Dutch intelligence report that automated image recognition AI is being used to monitor hijacked camera feeds. What happens when these two applications of AI inevitably collide?
It creates an entirely self-sustaining attack loop.
Right. Imagine an autonomous AI agent that not only scans the physical world through unsecured lenses, but actively writes its own sandbox-escaping exploits in real time to gain access to them. It doesn't wait for a human researcher to publish a proof of concept. It just finds the exposed camera, reverse engineers the firmware, writes the zero-day exploit, breaches the device, and begins analyzing the video feed for military targets, all in milliseconds. The question isn't if that capability is coming, but how we're going to build a perimeter when the attackers don't even need to sleep.
Yeah, the drawbridge won't just need to be pulled up. The underlying architecture of the castle itself will have to constantly shift to survive.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the source material. We hope this gave you the aha moments you were looking for and a clearer picture of how the digital landscape is shifting right under our feet. Keep auditing your footprint, keep asking questions, and stay curious. We'll catch you next time.